Hey folks, we are joined here on the couch today by none other than Daniel Erickson from Star Wars, The Old Republic. Now, what was it like making this game, Daniel?
Amazing.
By yourself.
Huge. It was.
I'm just learning that apparently you did sound design,
Yep.
all of the voiceover work.
Now you actually invented the original like blaster noise. That was all you.
Yeah, that was.
Now, when George
that was
Lucas
mainly
came to you and
sneezes.
said, "I want to come up with this space epic," and you said, "Here's this thing that I have. It's called Star Wars. I'm going to let you borrow it." Like, what was that like?
George and I are both from Modesto.
Okay.
Okay, so
Are you
like
really
that
from
was sort of
Modesto?
yeah, really from
Right
Modesto. Admit it publicly now, because I've made a success.
You've grown enough as a person.
I've made a success of my life. I can now say this. I'm from
Takes a
Modesto,
while
California.
before people can claim Central
Yeah.
California.
No, it's absolutely true. And yeah, when George first came and talked to me about the idea
Yeah.
of doing something in space
Yeah.
that had like war.
Yeah. You said strike space because space war already exists.
Yeah, no,
We've
well,
heard of this. It's boring and old at this point.
Yeah, and for most of that stuff was like, how do you make a video game out of it? That was the first question we talked
Well, yeah.
about.
So you need the movie first before you can make the video game. So, that
Yeah,
makes
so
perfect
and
sense.
most of that was about it. Like we had sort of figured out, okay, in 30 years or so, we're going to want to try to do the Old Republic for the video game. So we had to sort of lay down the groundwork then for what was going to make that possible.
So Star Wars: The Old Republic.
Yes,
It is launch day here today.
it is launch day. Super exciting.
What is it like being away from the rest? Like you're out here doing your press tour right now, and the game is launched. How freaked out are you about what's going on back at home right now? Would you have gotten the red phone call?
I would have gotten the red phone call, so at least I know like nothing's gone crazy. But it is a little bit like the old like 1950s where you wouldn't actually go in the delivery room when your wife had the baby.
Sure.
You just sort of pace outside with the cigar.
Okay.
That's kind of what
so
it
just
feels
keeping
like.
yourself busy here,
Yeah.
just trying not to think about
It's
it.
just sort of like you check in, like, is everything on fire? No. Great. Okay. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Did that happen with a baby of yours?
the baby catch on fire.
Well, I don't have any children. Let's just put that out there.
After 3 fires, still no takers.
Tragically,
Yeah.
the hospital.
Anything you want to talk about with the launch? Early access happened, and now the launch has happened. Anything that you've seen as far as player feedback from that initial hit?
Well, the big exciting thing is the servers are up and have stayed there the
Yes.
entire time.
Yes.
Like, we actually did get a really smooth launch, super playable. I've been in there every day playing and, checking everything out. And that was the big thing, is trying to make sure that we brought people in at a pace that we're bringing in more people per day than most MMOs ever had as, like, their peak subscription, right? So it's super, super technically difficult. And we wanted to make sure that when you're in, it runs well, it plays well. You guys have been in since early access, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
even over the course of early access, additional servers were brought online.
Yeah.
Then is that something that's gonna continue as more and more people get the game and
of
go
course.
in?
The whole point is you have to walk that really fine line between, you actually do want it a bit overcrowded at launch because everybody plays more at the beginning than they do later.
Sure.
And what I mean is they play
Yeah.
more hours per day.
Yeah.
And so what you don't want to ever do is set up the no man's land where you come back 3 months later and your server is the one that barely any people are playing.
So Jeff and I, we've been playing, Jeff more than I, but both a fair amount in the early access here, and we're on a server that's pretty highly populated. So during peak hours, we're hitting server queues and such. But also still having this experience when we're in kind of capital cities. Like there's a ton of instancing happening in Old Republic, which there are clearly story beats and character moments where it makes way more sense that you have exclusive access to an area. But there's this weird feeling of like, I'm queuing up and I'm spending like 40 minutes queuing up for my server. I get in and you run around the capital cities and they're huge and they're these giant places and they look awesome.
Streets that almost seem too wide.
But
Right.
yeah, but
Design-wise,
but I feel like it almost seems like they were designed and prepared for a lot more people. Like there's a lot of room around vendors where it's like, okay, a lot of people are intended to pile up on here.
Well,
So is that something that just as far as early access goes that you guys are kind of expanding how many people are in the space at once, or?
Well, one of the things that we found out really early in the game was that you actually have to design for possibility space, not everyday use space.
Okay.
So if you're going to have an event, if you're going to have a place, and you'll notice that Dromenkos and Coruscant very much look like that, but your Origin worlds didn't, and the later worlds don't either. We need space to actually do a big celebratory event in Drum and Kos.
Okay.
We need space to, let's say throw a parade, like whatever crazy thing we want to do. And in beta, especially let's say with like one of the betas would be closing down, another one would be starting up, you would see all the players roll into an area, right? You would see people all sort of come into that space. And one of the things that's actually really nice and had a little bit of a bug, so that should be ironed out now. One of the early patches is we have a light NPC system that's actually driven pretty much entirely server client side. So based on the population that's around you, we'll auto-populate NPCs as well. And those are the guys. If you ever see the guys you can't click on, that's because they're only on your side. And so we can auto-populate out some of that space. Depending on both the speed of your rig and how many people are actually out there at the moment anyway.
Is that a sort of like a user selectable slider, or is that something that's happening dynamically?
It's doing it dynamically.
You mentioned stuff like parades and celebrations, special events and stuff. Like what sort? Like I hadn't even considered any of that. What sort of stuff are you guys planning? Like or like the scale, or I guess the frequency.
Yeah, none of that stuff are stuff we're talking about yet. Like right now, it's just keeping
get the game out. Right?
Yeah, keeping the basics. That's all. My brain is unfortunately, of course, like thinking future already.
Well, I mean, I only ask because that was a thing that was bothering me, was about the city size and things.
It's really.
Scale.
It seems like the numbers in most of the areas I was in seemed like there were around 160, 200 people per instance, or at least that was the number at the top of the screen. I assume that's what that means.
Right.
And it's just empty streets, the ghost towns,
and that's
in a lot of areas.
There's not that many people out there right then, because a lot of people aren't hanging out in the middle of Drum and Kos, like right in the streets, right? If those 160 people were there, though, you would need to be able to actually sort of move and do a thing. One of the interesting thing about the instancing system, so you're seeing, like 160 people, and you're like, oh, there's a Drum and Kos 3, there's Drum and Kos 4.
Right.
The game was not designed to be an instanced game for that sort of area piece at what we would consider normal usage for the spaces. If that makes sense. What's happening right now is, like, if right now you're one of those guys who's just came in and just powered it, and you're in one of the later planets, there's no other instances of it, right? What we did is we built it to handle the amount of people we expected to be there, which is actually higher than you would normally get in the instance cap, but not to get too technical with it, the more population that's on at once, the lower we keep each of the instances, because all of the stuff builds up for what server speed is like. Right? It's all built to technically basically ebb and flow and give you the best performance it can at the moment. So what we would expect is 6 months from now, if you're on Drum and Kos, there's only going to be one instance of Drum and Kos spun up, but you're actually going to see a larger population there, and they're going to be building up a little bit more space, because you'll have less people overall all on the server at the same time.
I have to say, I can't even imagine having to try and
those
wrangle these sorts of logistics.
Those sound like pretty hard problems to figure out.
There are technical problems that said that when we got into really early, we said, what are the number one goals? We wanted the world to feel like a consistent place. Instancing was definitely not the first thing that we said, let's have a bunch of instance areas. But we decided when we all got together as designers that speed and performance and flexibility of design. So being able to find a group, being able to find your people, being able to play together when you want. If you've had the experience where if you do get invited to a group and somebody isn't, they immediately say, do you want to move to their instance?
Right.
And it just teleports you directly to exactly where you were in the next instance, so you can do that. And everything was based on making sure that your single performance as a player is as fast and clean as it can be.
Now, you say, obviously, going through the process of developing this game, a huge MMO like this, you have kind of objectives, you have your goals, and it's like, well, okay, realistically, we have to, compromises need to be made. Is there anything particular that you felt that you guys really nailed? Was there something that you're especially proud of as far as like hitting one of those goals, or just pushing the genre forward some?
I think the easiest one is this. So you guys have been playing. Can you actually describe to me the plot of what's happening and what you did on your origin world?
Yes.
Then I win. Right? And it's something that the average player and the average MMO, when you ask them, can't. They actually cannot tell you what is contextually happening around them.
The storytelling and the quality of the storytelling, and also the contextualizing of the storytelling, it clearly seems like the big thing. a lot of this feels like an MMO. There are a lot of things about this that, yes, there are genre conventions, and these things are very familiar. And you jump in, it's like, okay, yeah, it says Star Wars all over it, but I know what I'm doing here as far as the actual activity goes.
It says tank right on the screen. I know what that means.
But definitely in the storytelling, even things like we were talking about this on the podcast the other day, and I wanted to bring this up, but I like that every time that I load up the game for the first time, the first boot, I get that little story summation of like your story so far. It's like, yeah, these things are accurate. This is where I'm at.
Right.
If I forgot what the hell I was up to.
It might have been 3 months, right? People come in and out of MMOs, they come in and out of RPGs. One of the issues, that actually came from one of our early RPG designs, because I'm a guy who will play 40 hours of an RPG and set it aside and forget about it, and then come back 2 months later and be like, oh, why didn't I finish that game? And come in and just have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody's yelling at me about it.
Then you just start over.
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing, is actually what normally happens is you say, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to come back to this.
Or you just say, okay, I'm just going to go collect the 5 things that dude wants. I can't remember why I'm collecting things, but
he clearly needs them.
Yeah.
But
it says right here he needs these things.
The yellow arrow over his head says that I must do that, so I'm compelled.
Yeah, and it reminds you a little bit, like I really like, the formatting the artist picked for it. It still gives a little bit of that Star Wars scroll feel. So like you see it and you're like, oh yeah, here's my little Star Wars adventure.
So that's the storytelling you feel as head writer. Obviously, you're pretty pleased.
Well, and it was always
strong.
the big thing we were trying to bring out for it. It was actually a really interesting development process, because here's what happened. We announced the game and we said we're going to bring story to an MMO, and people said you can't do that. We said, oh, okay, how come? They said, well, because there's no story in MMOs. We're like, right, that's why we're bringing it. They're like, no, you can't do that. And realized that what had been a restriction from just not having the resources for the genre had then become a genre expectation. Right. So people would actually say, oh, no, story doesn't belong in the MMO. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. You're supposed to have a dungeon master. We're all here. But then, so we had to say, okay, no, we're really doing this. And so then people saw it and they said, oh, wow, it is a BioWare game.
Right.
But it's not an MMO. Because MMOs don't have it. So then we had to go the whole other route and bring out all the MMO features and show them, go, look, we're an MMO. So now, finally.
Now you've got all this content created. Like this is out the door. Is it 12 careers? Is that the
8?
8, okay.
8 classes, and then each of the classes has their advanced classes. But 8 full playthroughs with different stories and different pieces and all that.
I mean, obviously, like you mentioned resources, and that seems like something would be insanely resource intensive.
Yes.
How do you go from here?
I've actually been working on the future content stuff for quite a while. BioWare is pretty famous for having a giant polish time, to the point where the fans for a while at the end of the project were like, just ship the thing. They're in beta. They're like, look at this game, ship it. But that means all the guys who were working really hard on server performance and stability and all of this stuff, and the world designers are just pounding on these quests and making sure they're all buttoned up. At that time, the writers and the concept artists and all were already
like that stuff's all locked. Like you can't change it.
Exactly. We're already in the future, right? And we've been in the future for a long time. The goal for me when I came down here was not, the dream was not, hey. I mean, I played MMOs. I've played pretty much every MMO. I've liked them. But I love RPGs. The problem was single-player RPGs were not RPGs for me, right? RPGs are you and your friends, a little tipsy, somebody buys pizza and you're sitting around a table.
Sure.
And so where were my friends? But the MMOs obviously were the other side, which was everybody showed up with the dungeon master. So all you had was the dice and the miniatures, and you're like, I guess we'll just kill some stuff. So I wanted the eternal RPG. That's what we were all dreaming of. We were all saying like, hey, let's get the RPG you can do forever. So the game ships with chapters 1, 2, and 3. Which are not like Act 1, 2, and 3. Right. Like at the end of Chapter 1, that whole story is done. If you're playing the Bounty Hunter, the Great Hunt is finished. You've wrapped everything up.
I was surprised. Like I loaded up last night, and I'm around level 23 right now, and it was still said Chapter 1. Yeah. I'm like, well, what? Like,
when do we get to Chapter 2?
Yeah. Like halfway, or like level caps like 50, right?
Right.
So,
but it's an RPG, so
the rate goes way out. So
bit.
maybe I'm a third of the way through it or something. I'm like, I'm still at Chapter 1. What's going on?
What are you playing?
Sith Marauder.
Okay, yeah. So there's a definite, that whole plot you're dealing with will be wrapped up at the end of Chapter 1, and time will go forward, and the galaxy changes, and things, and then we have. It's the easiest way to think of it as sort of like then the second season of the television show starts.
Okay.
So in the future, more seasons, more cool stuff.
So if time goes forward, because I can still group up with people that are in Chapter 1.
Yeah.
at some point does that just become crazy and you have to go like, look, it's an MMO, like we want.
Pretty much.
It's a game, like you have to be able to group with people, stop being crazy.
Pretty much. And the thing is, it really doesn't, I haven't heard anybody talk about it really creating much of a dissonance. The thing is, because you can group up with somebody who's done quests that you have already done, but you don't see the cinematics or any of the stuff with them, right? You're just kind of hanging out for the ride.
Yeah.
So we do a lot to not rub it in your face. Same reason we do your class instances sort of by yourself for the very dramatic moments, right? Where it's like, Luke, you must join me. And you brought your guild. Hi, guild.
All these other buddies here.
Yeah.
So does the world end up getting phased at that point? Like, will the world change in such a way that, like, oh, let's say this building blew up as part of the story? Will I see
never out
differences
in public? Never out in public.
Okay.
Like very early, we always talked about we did not want that. We didn't want you standing there going like, I'm by the mailbox. What mailbox?
Right. So I was going to say that, like, that's other than just simple storytelling and the idea of there being no story in an MMO. It seems like, and it's the thing that has always ended up ultimately killing my interest in an MMO. Like, I'll play for a while, but it is a lack of permanence.
Yes.
And it's a thing that, for KOTOR, for, the games that lead up to this, that was a huge part of it, was these decisions that I'm going to make are going to have an impact on my character, on the universe, and on the rest of this story.
And oh my, the things that, and these are the things that are incredibly hard, obviously, and even harder in an MMO space, but there are classes that have to deal with the repercussions of their origin worlds in the end of Chapter 3, right? Where stuff comes back from literally hundreds of hours ago.
Okay.
And stuff that you've done all the way through can touch and adjust plots. And each one of the classes is as complicated as, like, a Knights of the Old Republic was. So, and the nice thing is, a lot of people played Knights of the Old Republic more than once, and we're like, oh, I want to see the other side. You could do that with this, or you could just go jump another class and get a totally different experience through it.
Now, I don't want you to pick any favorites here, Daniel, but what's your favorite class?
Yeah, see, everyone else. I can't talk from a story perspective.
Okay, fair enough.
Which of your babies is the least ugly?
I went Imperial Agent because all the buzz I was hearing from other people, I liked it aesthetically. I liked the idea of what this character would get up to, but I kept on hearing like this is like kind of the secret treasure
It
here.
is definitely the black horse, and there is the dark horse in the race, and yeah, it was through beta. The Imperial Agent was our lowest initial picked and our highest recommended from people who played it.
Interesting.
So because we did the surveys and
not many people used it, but whoever used it loved it.
Yeah, and told their friends and said, hey, you got to play this. Actually, one of my favorite gameplay pieces of the entire thing is Imperial Agent Sniper. But that's because I am a guy who, in any game, if you hand me a sniper rifle,
you're going to go from the distance.
Yeah, setting up basically just camp in like Hutball.
Yeah.
Because you actually have the distance and the sniper, and everything is sort of set up. So I'm never going to be the Hutball MVP. I'm not good enough at PvP. So what I can do is I can figure out who the Hutball PvP is on their side and just spend all my time killing him, whether or not he's got the ball, whether he's near the ball.
Just constantly sniping.
Just killing that dude.
Oh, that's
spoiler for the win.
It sounds satisfying.
Yeah.
And pro tip there.
Yes, pro tip. Just grief.
So
it's not griefing. It's part of the.
It is because
It's a viable strategy.
Absolutely, because his contribution to the game is going to be much higher than mine. So if I take his out, net win.
Are the other PvP war zones up and running? Because every time I've hit the button, I've gotten Hutball.
Right. Well, Hutball is the one that if you've got a server that's not balanced between the two sides, because it's the only one you can play against your own side.
Right.
So the other ones are running. I've actually run quite a few Alderons and quite a few Void Stars. But you're definitely, right now, you're getting Hutball a little bit more than other things.
How much consideration? Now, it was something that I was kind of complaining about before I played the game, and once I got into it, I understood why there's no like Rhodian or Wookiee playable classes, because there's so much speech in the game that you would spend so much time just reading subtitles and watching your guy make Wookiee noises.
Well, and it's not just there being so much speech, and this was one of the ones that was definitely hugely controversial when we started talking about it, is the Old Republic was never meant to be a toy box. Right? It's not just grab a bunch of really random stuff. It's supposed to be a storytelling piece. It's supposed to be, an epic adventure of you that you're going to relate to. And there has never been a lead character of any Star Wars property. And how many Star Wars properties have there been? So comics, books, anything that was not human or humanoid, right? Because you actually don't understand what it's like to be like a big ball of goo or something.
Right, right.
But that's why.
Only too well.
That's why the companion characters are such an important thing.
Right.
Is because they bring that sense of alienness. The magic of Star Wars in its classic form is a young boy who we can relate to off into the weird unknown.
I just really like the way the Rhodians look in your game.
They do look very.
It's a great rendition of that race, and I wish that I could be one, but I'll have to, I guess, settle for the companions for now. I want to ask you one more question about the storytelling stuff here, because again, we've been going deep into the Imperial stuff, and there are these kind of unexpected these great balances between like Sith priorities and Imperial priorities, and you start kind of. And then once you start realizing the differences between like how light side and dark side stuff works, and how like dark side doesn't always necessarily line up with Imperial interests, which
definitely not,
which you might assume since you're for the Empire and everything's for the Empire. And what little I've seen of the Republic stuff has looked nothing like that, as far as just the intrigue, the.
Well, part of that is because you're playing an agent.
Sure.
And the agent is definitely our. The agent is both our grayest class and our most complicated. The agent is not a class I would point. I'm not saying there aren't some very, very intelligent 12-year-olds out there, but I wouldn't point the average, 10, 12-year-old kid who loves Star Wars I wouldn't say, hey, play the agent story. Yeah. In fact, the farther you get into the agent story, the more complicated it gets. It is definitely our sort of highest end. If you tend to slant more in the like Mass Effect world of that thing than the original KOTOR world, the agent is going to feel very. It's going to feel very natural, and it kind of had to, because we said, okay, we want this to be like a Jack Bauer style KGB Cold War experience.
Right.
So it needs to be shades of gray.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're playing a Sith Warrior, things are a lot more black and white, right? You're playing Vader. You are a giant, larger-than-life character who.
But it's still extremely dark.
Yes.
It's still dark, and it's.
But it's sort of fairy tale dark.
Sure.
That's actually the difference. If you see the two, the agent is the closest thing in the game to feeling like it's actually a slice from real life, and it doesn't live as much in the fairy tale world. I would say the agent and the trooper on the other side are our humanity pieces that said, if you actually lived, if this was a real place and real cultures, what would life be like there?
I just imagine the writing process of having to like take like a day and a half between like, okay, writing a bunch of Imperial stuff. I have to clear my head entirely before going trying to write any of the Republic stuff.
Well, one of the interesting things is every class has their own writer. Okay. There's one author that Alex Freed wrote the agent front to back, every minute of it. Neil Polner wrote the warrior front to back, every minute of it. And then we have to learn each other's voices for when we do the world quests and things like that.
Sure.
But what'll happen is actually a lot of the times one of the writers for that class will go back and touch a class quest. Okay. And sort of redo some of the lines and like say, oh, actually the voice here is would be a little bit more like this to make sure when the agent gets his own class lines and things, he's coming in and sounding like the agent should.
So one of the things I've been running into, it seems to be a bit of a clash between the way people play MMOs, or at least the way I've been playing MMOs, and having all this story in there with regards to alignment. So I'm playing Dark Side. Okay. Because I want the most gear I can possibly get. Right. I want to make as many Dark Side choices as possible, even if they're things I wouldn't necessarily choose otherwise. And I've found myself feeling like I'm doing it to myself, I'll grant you that. I'm robbing myself of the story I would want to see because I want that gear. Right. How do you balance that out? Is there a solution to that other than telling me stop min-maxing, stop being weird?
Both, obviously if you're really worried about the role-playing stuff, because I'll tell you, the min-maxing is, none of that stuff is going to hurt you in any way by the time you're 50. Okay. And really, you don't need to min-max to do your leveling game. So if you want to role play. The other side I'll say is there are going to be some changes in the future that will help add some more options in there.
Cool. All right.
Because there are some classes that, like the agent, that very, very much lean in that direction.
Well, I ended up having to turn on the alignment stuff
because you're worried about
because I've been worried about. It's like I got to Dark 2 and I'm like, okay, but I have these 450 light points from before I turned this on. I'm like, those were the decisions I made, and I don't feel bad about making them, but I could be that much darker and that much closer to whatever this other gear is.
You can always pick up the diplomacy skill and just run
and just kind of grind it one way or the other.
Run evil missions. Just send your minions out to do horrible things in your name.
I discovered that. I just discovered that this morning that I could send them out on these diplomacy missions. I'm like, oh, cool. Just give me more dark side.
It seems like between that and kind of like running flashpoints over and over again, like you could kind of just grind your.
Go. Hey, Vet, today just go do something awful. All right, off with you then.
But with the agent in particular, there are so many just like either one of these decisions is fucked. Either one of these is going to be the death of a whole bunch of people. So I'm like, well, it's like which is worse, that I'm inconveniencing this dude more, or that I'm letting these people die?
Are you going to kill all these slaves immediately with all the poison in the water, or just a little bit of poison, just fuck them up a little bit?
And that's one of the things that we had to start at the beginning is you notice, so especially for the Sith, right? So you start being a light side Sith or a dark side Sith. And light side options are not what we would think of as a kindness to begin with. Because there is a societal expectation of you.
Right.
So a light side option for a Sith Inquisitor, who's the furthest down the line at the beginning, is like, maybe don't torture him so much.
It's like mercy or no mercy sort of thing, right?
Yeah, well, it's like a little bit of mercy or no mercy. And then later, as you grow in the light side, you get a lot more altruistic. You get a lot more options that you can really sort of pull in. The same thing, the early dark side options for a Jedi are not go murder the orphanage. The early dark side options are like, give this guy some bad advice. Right? Put this guy on sort of a bad path. Do something that's like a little greedy. I know they say romance is bad, but this chick's super hot, right? Like, it's the little temptations. Because again, it's going to break the whole concept if somehow you're on Tython, you're supposed to be a Jedi Knight, you've been vaunted and all this stuff, and like you're just butchering people as a crazy psychopath in the background.
Right. Have you found, have the numbers kind of come in at all from the testing leading up to this? Are there a lot of people playing light side Sith or dark side Jedi, just kind of see how it works out?
It is definitely a minority, but it's a large minority. I was actually pretty surprised to end up in I'm playing a Super Care Bear Sith Warrior right now, and I was really surprised to be in a group, and I just run one of the flashpoints, and everybody yelled at me because I won all the things in it. Like I didn't win any of the normal conversation pieces, but I won all the decisions.
Yeah.
And so then I was in another group, and we all picked light, and I was like, "What? Are we the whole like?" So immediately we friended each other, and we're like, "Hey, we're the force of light in the galaxy, and we're going to make the Empire a better place."
Boo! Empire needs to be more messed up.
I make it a better place by killing as many people as I possibly can. When the option just says kill him next to it, like, "Ooh, yeah, I'm just going to hit that."
Well, and that was part of the thing too of trying to make the Empire feel like a place that was real. The truth of the matter is, when you're playing, it is clear that a lot of this dark side stuff that you're talking about is not in the best interest of the Empire.
Right.
That having a group of people, and I've got a history degree, and it's sort of my passion is I thought about some of the worst times in European history with the power of the lords.
Yeah.
Right? Times when you basically had people with godlike powers over man who were totally unchecked by anything except their own, ability to Dark Ages, right? Anything but their ability to conquer their neighbor, and the indulgences and horror and it doesn't make for terribly good government.
And so that back and forth between like, well, the Empire is just trying to run a damn empire here.
Yes.
Like that's all. Like yes, they order is imperative to them, but they've aligned themselves with these Sith. Because, these Sith are powerful, but also these Sith are out of their goddamn minds.
Well, and it's an interesting one because the Emperor himself really is this savior character, right? So historically, they were run out during the Great Hyperspace War. The Jedi were trying to literally exterminate all of the Sith, which, as a culture, looking back, you think that's not okay. And so the
sanctimonious Jedi assholes.
Exactly. So the Emperor did save them all,
yeah,
and did rebuild their entire civilization, and then brought them back. So there is this sort of godhead feel about it. But the difference is their gods are sort of the capricious Greek gods,
right?
Right. Like you need to please them, and it's important they're there. These are important things to have these Sith. But I don't know that I want to be at a party with them.
Well, I mean, Jeff described his time in the Sith Warrior class as treacherous.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of
The whole thing.
The whole thing is just like I'm pretty sure I killed this guy who was teaching me. I'm pretty sure I'll probably end up killing the next guy who's teaching me. Like I just work my way up the chain, right? That's
how the Darths
That's
work.
how these things work.
Which is, let me tell you though, like, you know, again, making people make the choices and really pushing. So going light side Sith Warrior. So on Korriban, when Clemerol came and he was like sad little Clemerol that was like, oh, I couldn't get down there with the Shirax and, you know, I just was going to take your shards. I gave him mine.
Oh, wow.
And, you know.
I didn't even think for a minute to give him mine.
Well, here's the part.
I gave him something.
Here's the part that showed up very early when people were first playing. A lot of times people would bug it. And they're like, oh, it must be broken because you give him your shards and then your quest updates. And it says, get the 5 shards from the tomb.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, oh, yeah. I guess I just gave him mine. I guess I better go get some more. So you got to run that whole thing again.
Wow.
You got to work to be a light side Sith.
Was there another guy there next time? Did they just word spread that like, this guy gives up the shards?
Every time you come back.
Yeah.
No, but then you kind of get to decide like where Clemerol goes and like you can actually get him a job. Like you can say like, hey, he probably shouldn't be Sith. You know, he's not going to make it. But you can get him a job, and he ends up actually working with Jailer Nash. And
Yeah.
you know,
It all works out in the end.
yeah, he's like a Sith janitor.
Well, it sounds like you're having a pretty good launch, Daniel.
Yeah, it's really exciting. It's, you know, it's years and years in the making, and it's beautiful to watch something come out and people enjoy it so much. And playing right now, there's so much stuff in the game that, you know, I saw every line of dialogue while it was being done and, you know, edited everything. But when the cinematics team comes in and the amazing voiceover performances and you actually get to see, like, it in action,
Right.
yeah, nothing like it.
Very cool. Well, Star Wars: The Old Republic, available now all over the damn place.
Yeah, go buy it.
I'm sure. Ron, how can people get Star Wars: The Old Republic right now?
Is this available in stores? Can you get this in a store? Is this like...
Can I go to Origin.com and get this?
Apparently
You can. I'm getting nods. No, shaking his head. Now he doesn't know.
Bioware.com/stores.
I believe you can order it through most smoke signals.
Yes.
right.
Yes, go into your backyard.
Telegraph, smoke signal.
Semaphore works really well.
Yes, but
Available
only,
all over the place.
only at sea.
Smoke signals, not steam signals. Just saying.
Daniel Erickson, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir.